Good evening, everyone. This is Raptors postgame, presented by MasterCard. Oof. Not a good one. Not a great one. Thanks again to MasterCard, proud fan of basketball in the North. Let's start something priceless. I'm JD Bunkis. He is Donnovan Bennett. The Raptors drop a game. They're now up 2-1 against the Washington Wizards. They lose 122-103. Kind of a, I won't say wire-to-wire loss because they look like the Raptors came out well. But, yeah, pretty much after the first quarter on, started to get into a beatdown. Every time the Raptors tried to get a breath of air, the Wizards squeezed it right out of them. Again, you can interact with the show. Use the hashtag SNRaps. You can give us a call at 1-888-666-0590 or star 590, 416-870-0590. Tell us your thoughts on the game. Tell us what you thought about the performances by the Raptors. Anything worry you long term? Feel like this is just a blip? Here's the positive. Let's start with one positive note. The Raptors are still probably going to win this series. They're still the favorites to win this series. They still got home court advantage. Everything is fine. But the Cleveland Cavaliers, they lost tonight. And we were debating this before, like while we were watching the show. If you could only have one thing tonight, a Cavs loss or a Raptors win, all things considered, I think it's at least debatable. It's not debatable? Maybe a different mic. Try that one again. With different mics, which one works for you? Mic roulette.
I'll use all the mics.
So
it's not debatable. You felt good when the Pacers came back and won, and J.R. Smith decided, you know what? I don't care. Clarkson, if you're open, I don't care if LeBron's the best player on the planet. I'm taking this 45-footer for the win. You felt good, but the amount you felt good on a spectrum is not nearly as close to the amount you felt dismay, disgust when you were watching parts of the first half, the entire third quarter, and some of the rotation decisions in the fourth quarter. Any Raptors fan, including yourself, should and would have preferred the Raptors to win. You're right, the series is not over, but Washington look like a much better team, a much more energetic team, and true to form in the playoffs, they're very good at home. Their 7th straight home win. Only streak longer than that is the Golden State Warriors, who won 11 straight at Oracle.
I just want to get this one quickly out of the way. Again, use the hashtag SNRaps, at JD Bunkus, at Donnovan Bennett. You can share your thoughts on the game. But I got a few of these, so I'm going to take one of them right away, which is Frank Power, at Frank Power 4213. The calls are terrible. There was some complaining about the officiating tonight from Raptors fans, and I get it. There were some moments in the game where, DeMar DeRozan had one of the more ridiculous N1 jumpers that didn't get called a N1 that I've seen before. But you don't lose by 20 points, and especially not in that fashion because of officiating. I think that we can rule that one out, right?
Frank, you've got the power. I will give you that. I'm sure that's your favorite song. Beal and Wall had 40 points.
Yeah.
Not in the game. Not in the game, Frank, in the first half.
Yeah, they were quite good.
They finished with 56.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with the calls.
Again, Marnella at Mary Ward 14-3. It's okay. I've moved on. They'll win the series at home. Hashtag We the North. Yeah. Again, I don't think anyone's panicking about this game so much. If there are things, again, you can always get at us. You can let us know your thoughts. But let's start with the beginning of the game, because I thought that the Raptors looked really comfortable early. And DeMar DeRozan was getting buckets. By the 8 minutes into the game, every one of the Raptors starters had scored. And Lowry's knocking down threes. Valanciunas is taking Gortat off the dribble. They get Markieff Morris into foul trouble, something that's been a bit of a theme for the Wizards early in this series. Is like their bigs keep getting into foul trouble. The ball is moving. Everyone's contributing. OG Anunoby is once again doing things, and we'll talk more about him a little later on. But the Raptors seemingly all season long gained momentum when the bench came in and when the starters got to sit. And there have been different times, ebbs and flows, where the two groups have supported each other or buoyed each other, and it's been part of their great strength. But without Fred VanVleet, the Raptors bench mob just, it hasn't quite looked the same. And even at the end of that first quarter, when it was DeRozan plus the bench, and then to start the second, Norman Powell playing the role of Fred VanVleet, they haven't been able to establish the usual bench mob that we've seen and we've grown accustomed to in the past, where they're getting a lot of stops and they're moving the basketball. Just without Fred VanVleet, you're seeing they're really lacking that secondary ball handler and another guy who can get his own shot and also knock down an open shot when the ball starts humming around.
Yeah, I thought the game was vastly different whether you had the starters on the floor or the bench on the floor. And I think that's problematic because in this culture reset, you want them to be playing the same way. I think the starters played well. All of the starters ended up in double figures offensively, other than Serge, who did not play well and only finished with 3 points. But the starters were getting their shots. The issue was they were having multiple trips with empty shots, and they were turning the ball over systemically. And I think the worst culprit was Kyle Lowry, who ended the game with 5 turnovers to go with his 5 fouls. The issue for the bench, and they actually took care of the ball, only 4 of their 18 turnovers came from the bench. And you would think maybe that might be an issue with Fred VanVleet not playing. The issue with the bench is they couldn't get a shot.
Yes.
The starters got shots. They just didn't value the ball and didn't get enough of them. The bench couldn't get clean, open looks. And so, especially when they got down big, it was, well, let's just try and shoot ourselves out of it. DeLon, I don't really feel like I should take this 3, but I don't really know what else to do. CJ Miles, I've been hot for 2 games. Let's see if I'm hot north of.
Just start game from everywhere.
Yeah, let me just take these heat check corner 3s on the road and see how those go. And they didn't go, and that's why no one in the bench, as I mentioned, finished in double figures, and the entire bench, virtually, who played meaningful minutes, finished in the minus.
So if I was going to ask you what from this game maybe gave you a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, would there be anything? Because I would say that there's a couple. The turnovers is now a trend that's lasted through 3 games. The Raptors entered this contest averaging 15.5 turnovers, and they had 18 tonight. They had 12 in the first half, which resulted in how many points against them? 22 points off of those. And the turnover battle at the half was 22-6, and that was pushed up by the Raptors grabbing 3 straight steals right at the end of the half to close the gap to about 8 points. But there was a few things from this game. So I would say the turnovers, which continue to be an issue. Bradley Beal finally finding himself, getting into a rhythm and dropping 28 points and doing it fairly efficiently. Or John Wall and his continued just devastation and destruction of everything that the Raptors try to throw at him defensively. And most concerningly, I would say, would be when he gets to identify Jonas Valanciunas in the pick and roll and either get to a spot where he's at the rim, either himself finishing there or dumping it off to Gortat, or if the guard goes underneath or there's a switch with Jonas Valanciunas, he's oftentimes pulling up for, a 12 or 14 footer, which he's knocking down. Any of those things, do you think that is more concerning than the other to you, or is there anything that you think that they can shore up? Because to me, the turnover seems the most correctable at this point.
I think, not to be, politically correct and have a cop-out answer, but I think there's a through line from all those things. And I think the turnovers are an issue, and the turnovers lead to transition points. And I think the biggest issue, if you were to boil all of that down, one word is defense. They gave up 69 points in the first half. They, again, offensively, other than the turnovers, they played well. They scored 61 points. You should, on the road, you should feel good going into the half, putting up that amount of points. Washington got whatever they wanted. They scored 30 points in every quarter of the game, other than the last one, when the game was virtually over. So I think the defensive intensity or lack thereof is an issue. And you mentioned John Wall being able to get to wherever he wants. And
Big time.
He, abused Jonas Valanciunas in the pick and roll as he did all of the bigs. But they picked on Jonas in that 1-5 often and early. And if it wasn't John Wall scoring, it was Marcin Gortat scoring with a little baby runner. But how much of this is Kyle Lowry guarding his man, keeping John Wall out of the paint? And as good as Lowry has been at times in this series, often, other than taking some deep threes, and he was good from deep tonight, when he's getting in the lane, seeing a lot of pump faking, seeing a lot of hesitation, he's not getting all the way to the cup. Wall is finding a way to recover and force another action in the offense. Where conversely, in the pick and roll with the Wizards, John Wall is getting to the cup when he wants to, and he only isn't getting to the cup when he sees someone open in the corner for a three-point shot, or he sees Gortat open in the middle of the lane because JV is trying to play too. He's trying to hedge on John Wall, which isn't working, and recover to Gortat, which isn't working.
Yeah, Gortat finishes 8 of 10 tonight for 16 points. And yes, all those buckets essentially were off of little drop-offs from John Wall where he was unguarded. That's why he's 8 of 10 tonight. And the Wizards also shot 44% from three, thanks in part to John Wall and his 14 assists in this ball game getting to those spots. I think that, to me, the most correctable thing is the turnovers, and the thing that they need to shore up the most of the turnovers. And yes, Fred VanVleet coming back will absolutely help that because he is a steady presence back there. He's not a turnover machine. And I think he's a better ball handler in some, not a better ball handler, but I think he is a more consistent ball handler than DeLon Wright. And I think that if you have a moment where Kyle Lowry is not playing up to par and DeLon Wright wasn't playing particularly well tonight, like he was struggling a little bit, it really is nice having Fred VanVleet back there as opposed to what the Raptors tried in the beginning of the second quarter, which was, let's try to throw Norm Powell out there. And Norm Powell, even despite hitting that 1 3-point shot, still really missing in action. But the big thing with the turnovers, and this sounds really stupid and obvious, but was the points off of them because Washington is a deadly, deadly transition team. We went over this before the series started about all the guys that they have who can knock down open threes. Kelly Oubre Jr., Otto Porter, third best percentage in the NBA, Bradley Beal. Like, Mike Scott has punished them over and over and over from deep this series. Now, all of a sudden, Ty Lawson is knocking down threes, which is a new development for them and something actually needed because Thomas Satoransky has mostly been a ghost in this series. But when you let John Wall run the floor and Bradley Beal run the floor and force the Raptors to play that transition defense, they don't have any answer for that. And so if you're going to turn the ball over and give them those shots, or you're going to miss those three-pointers and let them get out in transition, you're in real trouble. And so for me, I think that the Raptors are going to do a better job the next game. I think that's going to be one of their main focal points. What I don't know is how they're going to slow down the issue with John Wall because he was missing a lot of shots at the rim those first two games, the first one especially. Did get to the free throw line a lot, did complain about the officiating, but he seems to be settling in as the series goes on, and he seems to be finding even more comfort. And the Raptors have given him a whole bunch of different looks. I actually think OG did a pretty good job on him later in this game, bothering him with a little bit with the length, and he can recover a little bit better. But OG also still struggles at times to fight through those screens, and you suffer the same death when you're asking the big to all of a sudden guard John Wall. Like there hasn't been an answer for keeping him from his spots. And I'm not really sure what the Raptors are going to do with that because you're right. Kyle Lowry has been asked to eat up a lot of those minutes defensively, and he looks completely overmatched in that regard.
Yeah, when you look at the starters and how they match up, OG against Otto Porter Jr., I think I'll take that. I think OG is outplayed him, just giving you a little bit more than you expected.
OG's been terrific.
Serge Ibaka versus Markieff Morris. Serge did not play well tonight, but in the first two games, I think surely
the first quarter,
we'll give that
though,
2-1
everybody
Serge.
looked so good in the first.
Mm-hmm.
Like I noticed, that I marked to you that Serge looks like he's really making a different effort on the glass, and he looks like he's doing just such a better job at moving the basketball. And then later, it was just like all the mistakes started to compound themselves. Like and even he like. All of a sudden, he just can't hold on to the basketball. Like, I don't know what the Wizards put on his hands in that game, if that was a spell. But, like, every time he's touching the ball, it's, like, slipping out of his hands and moving everywhere. Like, a very, very inexplicable change from the first quarter on.
Yeah, Serge finishes with 6 boards, JV with 5. Not the numbers you need from those two guys. But, again, when Washington's not missing many shots, there aren't available rebounds to get. Jonas versus Gortat. Gortat played well tonight, but Jonas owned that. In the 2 games in Toronto. DeMar versus Beal. Beal had a huge game tonight, but again, I think DeMar's been the better player over the course of the series. The one matchup in that starting unit where the Raptors have not just lost, that at this point, after 3 games now, they've lost by a large margin, is John Wall, Kyle Lowry. All-star point guard versus all-star point guard. And you're assuming, again, you think the bench is house money. Mm-hmm. Hasn't been the case because apparently Ty Lawson is the best player that the China League has ever produced.
You'd agree that's the most surprising thing about this series so far,
no
right? Is
question.
That the bench has been more in Washington's favor than it has been Toronto. And you've said this before. DeLon Wright has been good, and CJ Miles was great through the first 2 games, and those are bench players, but they've been with the starters and not on their own, and it hasn't been a situation where all of a sudden that group has looked the same way. Like, they haven't looked the same as a core unit, and I guess it should have been expected because Fred VanVleet is very important.
But you can make an argument that the best 2 bench players in this series, Mike Scott, Ty Lawson. You can make that argument. I'm not saying it. You can make the argument.
I mean, you would, but you'd be a delusional Wizards fan because I think that DeLon Wright and CJ Miles have overall been better through the 3 games.
They weren't.
Maybe not Mike Scott. Mike Scott's probably number 1.
This game is 1/3 of that equation, and they weren't good tonight. Mind you, Mike Scott wasn't all that good tonight, but he was outstanding in both games in Toronto. I just there's the fact that we're even having the conversation is a massive issue.
Yeah, and again, I think that the stranger part is still that Pascal Siakam. He had one moment in that game where he dribbled into the paint and he finished beautifully. I can't remember who it was against, but he created a little bit of offense for himself, and that was something that we saw down the stretch this season. But it's been lacking for him in this series. He hasn't been able to assert himself on that end. He hasn't been able to provide offense. I don't know what the hell happened though. Like during that moment where he and Jakob Poeltl were trying to pass late, and it looked like he made a nice, pretty pass to Yak, and it ended up being a turnover. But either way, you know what's surprising about the Kyle Lowry thing, just because you're mentioning him getting overmatched? That Kyle played well in the first 2 games. He was very composed, and he did a lot of really positive things, but the 3-point shot wasn't falling. And now tonight, it was like, what did he finish from 3? 4 of 5, like 4 of 8 or 5 of 8, I think it was. The 3-point shot was falling. Yeah, 5 of 8 from deep tonight. He's a rhythm shooter, and he was knocking down those shots, but it just seemed like every other facet of his game fell apart. Like the rebounding he still got some assists and still grabbed some rebounds, but not nearly as good as he has been earlier in the season. Like, yeah, you're right. The sloppiness with the basketball, the turnovers, that stuff didn't really work out for them.
And it's a great testament that numbers lie, because he finishes with 19 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 steals, shoots 42.9% from the floor, and as you mentioned, 62.5 from 3. If you put that up against the numbers in game 1 and game 2, statistically,
he's played better. Yeah.
This is the best game he's played. But if you watch the tape, which I wouldn't fault Dwayne Casey for just burning this tape and saying we're not even going to watch it, we're just going to move forward. We don't have that luxury. We have to talk about what happened for the next hour. But if you watch the tape, this was by far, for me, his worst game. The 3-point shots are going to bring that number up, but with the turnovers, with the fouls, and with the lack of defense on Wall, it was a tough night for K-Lo.
I gotta say too, one of the big moments for Kyle Lowry in that game was the flagrant foul on Bradley Beal, because the Raptors came out of the half and started to close the deficit. He fouls him on the head. It starts a little bit of contentious play between the two teams. Like, Bradley Beal runs up on him, and as much as Lowry's goes up my bad, it ends up being a 4-point play because Beal splits the free throws, but then ends up moving the ball, and it ends up in a wide open 3 from the corner. Knock it down. The lead grows a little bit. And it also plants that seed of these two teams getting physical with one another and being unhappy with the way that they're playing physically. And it does lead into a confrontation that happens just a little bit later. And I want to talk to you about that and get your thoughts on this, because so Gortat has a huge flop on JV, right? They're going back the other way. This is after the first flagrant. It's getting chippy. Huge flop. JV decides not to give up the basketball to Bradley Beal. He feels as though that absolutely should not have been an offensive foul. Holds the ball up, is obviously trying to get it to the official without just giving it to Beal. Beal takes offense to this and starts smacking Jonas Valanciunas across the chest, across the arm, and then actually hits him in the face, which he gets the technical foul for. I actually wouldn't have been surprised if it would have been even a little bit more, considering he did smack JV in the face. If that's a smaller guy, if JV actually maybe plays that up and drops to the ground, maybe it's a little different. But either way, tough one. All of a sudden, teammates start jumping in there, and Wall and Serge Ibaka exchange words. We don't know what the words were. They were bad enough from John Wall to Serge Ibaka that both guys ended up getting a technical, but that the comments were not shared despite the referee knowing what they were. And
well, they shared it to PJ Carlissimo.
PJ Carlissimo got the scoop. He got the scoop, but we don't know who. But we don't know what was said. Either way, it was enough to give John Wall a technical. So probably nothing great. I like sticking up for your teammates. I'm going to start it with there. I like that you and I have discussed a ton of different times throughout the year about, as you call them, 0 to 60 surge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've debated as
Baka.
to
Nice.
what the merits of that are, right? Because I think sometimes Serge plays a little bit out of control, and you're just hoping that he doesn't get ejected from that game because Raptors need him, and it's still a ball game at that point. But I like sticking up for the teammates. That's all well and good. Going to JV's aid and everybody making sure that this is all settled down and grabbing a guy, grabbing a dance partner, all good. The one thing about that concerns me a little. Have you ever been in a fight?
Don't worry about it.
Have you ever been in a fight with like friends? Like not fighting your friends, but in a fight with a friend fighting other people?
Not a real one, no.
Okay. Well, actually, you've played sports, though, so maybe you can comment on this as well. And you've played football. It's a physical sport. I'm sure you've had your off and your little scrum. What happens when you get in a fight with your friends against another group of people? Like, it's an extremely powerful bonding experience. You would admit that, right? Like, it's something that you end up talking about later. You start talking trash about the other people, and you talk amongst each other. It's a good way to start connecting with someone. I don't advertise it or advocate it. I obviously think fighting is really stupid, but it does do that trick. And for a team like the Wizards who have chemistry issues, and you're seeing John Wall and Marcin Gortat, you're like chop it up and joke around about, like I watched Gortat walk up and say, "What did you say? What's going on?" I just was like, crap. I don't like that. I don't want the Wizards being friends with each other. I want that gif of them or that meme of them where you're yelling at each other on the bench while Bradley Beal has a towel over his face. Like, I don't want them to go in there, feel good about the win, but also be like, yeah, we didn't back down and we're all fighting for each other. And there's a brotherhood here. You feel what I'm saying at all?
It's got awful dark. Like, this became Fight Club.
That's not Fight Club. How's that awful dark? That's my opinion on like that type of a scrum.
I will say this, and you can derive whether or not this means I'm in agreement with you. John Wall is the emotional leader of that team.
Mm-hmm.
He plays with a lot of emotionally. That can be channeled in two ways, and we've already seen it in this series. It can be channeled in frustration, and that emotion is taken out on his teammates. Victim number one, Marcin Gortat.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen the sideline footage of them going at it while Bradley Beal sits beside them and is like, "Mom and Dad are fighting again. Make them stop."
I don't know. I feel like he's in those fights as well.
Well, but he wasn't partaking in that one. He wanted to be anywhere else but sitting beside them. Or that emotion can manifest itself in the guy we saw tonight who's running into the second row for a loose ball, which he clearly wasn't going to get, doing the hero dive, and then doing the Hulk Hogan salute to the crowd, trying to get them fired up.
We've seen him jump on tables before, et cetera, et cetera. He's an emotional guy.
He is. And so you would love for the compounding aspect of the frustration to continue to manifest and tear the team apart via John Wall and not be forcing him to be the Energizer Bunny in the arena and thus in that locker room.
I do think, though, again, when you do have an experience like that and everyone gets to start talking trash, like now you have a common, you already had a common enemy.
Couldn't you say the same thing for the Raptors who are down? Like if they win on a 20-5 run.
But my thing here is that the Raptors don't have chemistry issues. They're all very friendly with each other. I was watching the Cavs game before the Raptors started, and it's NBA TV feature over and over and over again. And every single one is about how Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan love each other. It's the most documented bromance in the history of Toronto.
I was thinking about that. How do you think JV feels?
What?
Like there's a new, I think it was an ESPN mag cover where it's like Kyle and DeMar yucking it up. And
why would it be JV more than anyone else?
No, because he's the guy who's been here the longest. I'm just saying, slide in JV, Serge maybe. I think those are really the only guys who could have
JV,
a legitimate argument.
Call me when you make an all-star team.
Fair. But I'm just saying, can we not spread the love a little bit? Is always going to be the backcourt? Everything's going to be the backcourt for everything?
They're the all-stars of the team. That's what happens. The Cavaliers aren't throwing Jose Calderon up in the shots. Like, this is like right now, it's LeBron.
On the Slam magazine cover, the one time they added another person, it was Drake in a suit.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, JV is like, can I get a look?
Yeah, Drake.
I've been here so long.
Drake getting the Slam cover ahead of anybody else in the Raptors. It's kind of, it's fitting, but it's kind of harsh. I think that if you're a team that has chemistry issues, that's a really nice game for you. You're at home, you're in front of your crowd. You body bag the Raptors. You have everybody's getting touches, everybody's eating. John Wall's dominating. Bradley Beal gets a shot back. Marcin Gortat's dropping in bunnies. You get in a little bit of physical play with that team, and you feel like maybe you got in their head a little bit, and everyone's bonding together. So I just think that I'm not worried about the series. I think that the Wizards are still going to lose it in 6, but Raptors had a real opportunity to kind of step on their throats, and I thought that was happening earlier in that game when the Raps did come out, and the Wizards are giving them a good push early on, trying to play with energy, knowing what the stakes are, and Toronto ends up with a 9-point lead that gets erased. But yeah, just some things that really went in terms of a Wizards team that has struggled throughout the season to play well with one another. That was a really nice win for them, and I think that we've got ourselves a series right now.
Can I tell you the one we talk about defense, turnovers, John Wall's emotional state. Can I tell you the one thing that actually I think it's a missed opportunity in my biggest negative takeaway from this game?
Mm-hmm.
I looked at this game through the prism, not just what it means for the series. I looked at it based on the schedule and the way it's laid out, and what it means for this team to have the best opportunity, the most probability to make it past an Eastern Conference Finals into a Finals. We know there's going to be a juggernaut most likely waiting for them in the second round, assuming the Cavs,
The Pacers?
take care of
Victor
business.
Oladipo?
Yes, and Lance Stevenson.
Oh, God, you think John Wall's driving you nuts? Wait till Lance Stevenson starts jumping under people and doing his antics.
The Raptors, they got a quick turnaround. They go Friday, Sunday afternoon against Washington. Let's say they get Game 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe Washington fights, so it's a gentleman's sweep. But the series is, for all intents and purposes, over.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't be surprised if Washington laid down in Game 4 and the Raptors sweep them on Sunday. We knew going into today, because the Cavs and Pacers split the first 2 games, and I'm bringing up that series, listeners, because that's the team on the other side of the bracket. The NBA does not reseed the playoffs as they should, but they don't. We knew that series was going at least 5 games. The 5th game of that series would be Wednesday. The same day, the 5th game of this Raptors and Wizards series would be Wednesday. So you knew Cavs, Pacers, at least Wednesday. If the Raptors finished this series off on Sunday, the NBA wouldn't have started the second round, because they like to start them on the weekend, 4 slots, give ABC some love, on a Saturday or Sunday. They would have had close to a full week's rest to get ready for probably LeBron, but maybe Victor Oladipo, whoever that second round opponent is. And I think, listen, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but I think it was a lost opportunity, because if this team is going to make a real deep run, they need every advantage they can. And I think taking care of business tonight would have put them in such better stead moving forward if they could rest up. Freddie's getting a little stimulation on that shoulder. He's working on the range of motion. I just think all of those things, when you're trying to get 16 wins in a month and a half, I think they matter. And I think we could look back if this gets dragged out to 6 or even 7, if the Wizards continue to win on their home court. We could look back and say, man, dropping that game, as much as we said, oh, it's meaningless, they're going to win the series. Anyways, you're in it for long goals at this point as a Raptors group. And I think it was a missed opportunity in that sense.
Let's talk about OG Anunoby.
OG Anunoby.
Talked a little earlier about things that surprised us, right? The bench not being able to assert themselves a little bit better than the Wizards bench, considering man for man what they've got. Pretty surprising. Surprise number 2, I'd say it's OG Anunoby. I really thought that the Raptors were going to have to lean on DeLon Wright heavily at the 3 in this series. That they were going to need to give him a look. We've gone over it a million times, but that he'd give you a little bit of spacing. He'd knock down a shot. He could defend John Wall. He could defend Bradley Beal. He can switch on multiple guys. He can give you a ball handler, all these other reasons. And part of that, though, was OG had played better heading into the postseason, even though, the numbers never pop off the page because he never plays a ton of minutes. But tonight was super, super, super impressive. And it's like he keeps one-upping himself to a certain degree. And Dwayne Casey, gave him a little bit more burn tonight. OG ends up finishing with 26 minutes. That's his playoff high. He's 2 of 3 from deep. He finishes with 12 points, 3 rebounds, grabs a steal, a really great steal at the end of the half where the Raptors were trying to make a little bit of a push. He only has 1 turnover. He had he's one assist, but it was a really beautiful assist where he caught a ball with a mid-range two, and he's open, and he's been knocking down shots, but he's patient, and he waits for Kyle Lowry to cut into an open space, finds him for an easy layup. He's playing with a level of composure that is really, really encouraging because that's kind of his MO. He doesn't show a ton of emotion. The Wizards try to get into his face early on. Markieff Morris hits him with an elbow in the back, and what does he do? What does the young buck do? He stands right up in the scary Markieff Morris face and shoves him right back, like pushes him and doesn't back down at all. It's not overly shocking that he's doing it because he's exceeded expectations all season. But I would say that considering he did hit a rookie wall earlier in the year and that you are playing such a tough opponent, that he has done such a good job shooting, such a good job passing, such a good job defensively. Not such a good job, I shouldn't overrate that, but that out of all the things that have kind of slowed down Bradley Beal and John Wall, and specifically those first two games against Bradley Beal, he's really been good.
The greatest shooters in the world, Steph Curry, Stephen Nash when he was playing.
OG Anunoby.
Might as well say it like that. A great year for them. It's 40, 50, 90.
Yeah.
OG tonight, he gave you an 80, 66, 100. Now, yes, I know it's a super small sample size and it was one game, but he, as you mentioned, he wasn't playing his normal 16 minutes, 18. Played 26 minutes. And if you were to tell me when we started the Raptors postgame show and we were debating whether or not OG Anunoby should continue to have his spot as a starter in the playoffs at the small forward position, he should continue to get the same amount of burn he was getting earlier in the year, what he would do in the playoffs, considering his struggles at times both on offense and defense. If you were to tell me that, you can make an argument that how many players have been better, Raptors players have been better than OG and Anunoby.
How many have played with more composure and have played more consistently than him? Because I think other guys have had bigger impacts on the game, but from the standpoint of just consistency over the 3 games, I'd say he's actually been the most consistent Raptor.
Yeah, it's tough to read his composure because he has no pulse.
Yeah.
Like, so you wouldn't know if he was nervous because he doesn't speak or even blink. But yeah, I just, again, we're looking at the entire body of work of the 3 games, which is, again, a small sample size. But whether it's Kyle or DeMar or Serge, they've all had highs and lows. OG has been flatline.
Mm-hmm.
And with that bulk of work in the series, he's been one of the Raptors' most impactful players on both ends. And I don't think anyone, including OG Anunoby, including Dwayne Casey, including any of our listeners and viewers, would have thought that would have been the case if we were having this conversation 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to monitor going forward if he continues to play this way, if Dwayne Casey continues to stretch out his minutes, because we have seen him play well in the first 2 games, but he hasn't seen really the major uptick, and they still have leaned on different guys late. Like, I wonder if we do end up seeing an OG Anunoby in crunch time. It is all going to change when Fred VanVleet comes back in terms of the complexion of the series and the rotations. I don't think you're going to see any more Lorenzo Brown or Fred VanVleet, or Norman Powell. But I would say that's one of the more encouraging things for Raptors fans so far this series, and not just this series, but moving forward, that they really do seem to have quite a player on their hands. Again,
you mentioned Raptors fans. Can I just give a quick shout out
to the Jurassic Park folks?
Well, them too. I mean,
Man, that's Jurassic Park on 420. What do you think that was like?
Oh boy, come on! I'm so over 420.
I'm just saying, it was lit.
Ha ha ha. I'm not talking about the fans that made the trek down to Bremner and York for Jurassic Park. I'm talking about the fans who made the trek to the District of Columbia, Washington, who went and they took those giveaway terrible T-shirts and they made them their own, scratched out the Wizards slogan and put in the Raptors. There was some USA chants in the building, which is like, okay, like we've never heard that before. They were playing Born in the USA at virtually every stoppage. But the Raptors fans, even though they didn't have much to cheer about for long stretches, made themselves known. I want to shout out and salute all of the Canadians who are probably listening to us on their trek back or maybe staying for Game 4, making a weekend out of it. Going to visit the Capitol buildings. Shout out to the Raptors fans who made the trek to DC.
Raptors fans always travel well. I'm not surprised that they went down there. I do wonder, like, bringing the Sharpie. Like, just having a Sharpie on you is an interesting move.
That's priceless, JD.
That is priceless. Yes, of course. Thank you to all the Raptors fans who watch the show, who travel down to the ball games. Passionate bunch. It's a great bunch. Again, this is Raptors postgame presented by MasterCard. Proud fan of basketball in the North. Let's start something priceless, as you were just saying. Again, you can get at us at JD Bunkus, at Donovan Bennett. Use the hashtag SNRaps. Andrew Morehouse 4 tweets in, how does Morris not get ejected for pushing a ref? I thought that was not really a nothing play, to be honest. If the refs really wanted to make something of it early in the game, but I don't think that you impact a ball game when I don't think that he was shoving a referee. Like, he bumped him a little bit, could have given him a technical, but to me, that's totally fine. I have no issue with that. To me, what's more interesting is I do want to know what John Wall said to Serge Ibaka. Well, because I think there are some things that you really can't say on the floor, and if it's going to warrant one technical, I do wonder if maybe a fine comes in from the league for that.
I highly doubt it. I mean, Serge has, and I love him. I love me some 0 to 60, Ibaka not nice. But Serge does have a little boy who cried wolf. Like, he is doing the hold me back. I'm getting real upset.
He ran right into that left tackle's arms. Like, he just went, hold me back, as Jalen Rose says, like, right into this monstrous guy's arms. Like, where were you going, Serge? Like, you thought you were going through that guy?
Yeah.
He's like 6'8", and he's probably 360.
And he does it about once a week.
Yeah.
So John Wall may have said, I don't like your hairline, Serge, and he may have taken that personal. But
I don't think that gets whispered into PJ Carlosimo's ear.
There was some reporting on Twitter, which means it must be true, that John Wall grabbed a certain area of his body, private area. And so, I mean, listen.
I think that gets a fine then, for sure, if that gets a fine.
I'm not a detective. I just play one via live stream. But if you're grabbing an area of your body that's private.
Careful now.
And you're also saying something. How many phrases are there to say while doing that? Like, you may be suggesting something.
We're getting too close, I think.
Okay.
I think we're getting too close to the line.
Right.
Like, I'm starting to see the line. I'm like, all right, let's reel back from the line. At Little Aristotle, Sonny K tweets in, despite the loss, I feel fairly comfortable that the Raps can win one of the games on the floor. Hashtag SNRaps. Our friend Dale Hamill tweets in, I think the Raptors are clearly the better team. Not worried about this series, but giving the Wizards turnovers feeds their confidence, and with confidence they can hurt you and stretch the series out longer than it needs to be. Hashtag SNRaps. And Zach Mujanot tweets in at JD Bunkus, at Donovan Bennett. OG has been unbelievable. He has burst through the rookie wall, and we saw him slowly coming out at the end of the season, which, again, I totally agree with. And his emotions, or lack thereof, is helping the team more than we see when the team is down. Hashtag SNRaps. That's actually pretty interesting, is the Raptors are a team full of really fiery guys, right? Like JV, pretty fiery guys, 0 to 60 Serge. DeMar DeRozan can get pretty emotional. Kyle Lowry can obviously be quite emotional. OG's the one guy in that unit, right, who is just calm, cool, collected. Raptors don't really have they don't have a starter like him. That's like, he's the only guy.
I don't know if OG knows that they lost. Like, I don't even know if he looks up at the scoreboard. He just plays.
Yeah. Angelo Matanizos tweets in, Raptors will win the next two and have plenty of rest. DeMar DeRozan will go beast mode on Sunday. Hashtag SNRaps. Yeah, one of the more encouraging things from the game at the beginning was that DeMar DeRozan did look excellent. Again, with the starters, though, that when they did put in the bench, it was clamped down on DeMar, and when other guys had to make shots, nobody was really capable of doing it. There wasn't another guy that stepped up in that unit and gave DeMar DeRozan anything. You had, Jakob Poeltl taking that dumb offensive foul where he's just running over Kelly Oubre Jr. and giving them some energy and some confidence with another turnover early. Pascal Siakam, again, has not been able to find any offensive touch in this game. DeLon Wright in game one was a revelation offensively, but all of a sudden the shooting from deep off the dribble, I don't think is quite there for him yet. It's more of still a feet set catch and shoot guy. He's attacking the paint with some real confidence, which is good, and I think the Raptors need that. So no discouraging of any of that. And then CJ Miles, they just kind of keyed in on him in that second unit and said, all right, that's the one guy who can't beat us. And it ended up working, and it ended up slowing them down. So, yeah, I feel confident that DeMar DeRozan can get going again. But I do wonder if they start if Fred VanVleet's not back next game, do you try more of the Kyle Lowry in the bench look? Like, that was such an effective thing for the Raptors in the past, and it does give them a little bit more three-point shooting and ball handling.
I think you do. And I think this speaks to the difference between guys who are support players, bench players, and why they are bench players and why they aren't starters, and why out of all of the guys on the bench, even though they've all had their moments, I think Fred is the most valuable and is the guy who, if anyone on this team were to get six-man votes, even though no one really deserves it, I think Fred would be the guy, because the difference between guys who are on the bench and starters is bench guys can't replicate the level of performance that we saw from DeLon earlier, that we saw from Siakam earlier, that we saw from Pirtle defensively earlier. Night in, night out. They'll do it for 2 nights here, 3 nights here, but they don't do it every night. DeMar DeRozan, who didn't play all that well, still finished with 23 points. Mm-hmm. There's a level of consistency from your frontline starter that you expect that you just don't get from your bench. And so there have been many nights where you look at the bench, you're like, man, well, this group is playing better than starters. They certainly are defensively. Mm-hmm. Why don't they get more run? And could this be a starting lineup in the future? Well, no, this is the difference. Mm-hmm. Because on tough nights like this, on the road, in a bad night for DeMar DeRozan, he has 23. In a bad night for DeLon Wright, he has 6. Like, that's the difference. And so at his peak, DeLon looks so good. And look, we see him in game 1, and you're like, man, this guy could be a future all-star. And then he comes back to earth. And I think Fred is the guy who, similar to OG, who is a starter, is, steady Freddie. He's even, and you know what you're going to get.
Do you think we believe he's more even because his name is Fred and
it goes
Freddie
steady?
Like,
probably.
Yeah. There's it's not a 0% part of his image is that Nick gets the nickname Steady Fred.
But he does.
Yes. No, it is part of his persona.
No question. I don't think people are thinking of disc jockey Humble and Fred and like, oh, that Fred, he's steady.
Humble and Fred.
Like, I think you got to play the part.
He is humble, Fred. This is bet on yourself. Do you hear that? But like,
is bet on yourself isn't really that humble.
Yeah, you're right.
You're kind of telling people.
No, he's not. It's not humble at all. Yeah, it's like I'm very confident in myself. Fred VanVleet is definitely counting some money. I think like he doesn't have a ton of leverage. There's not a ton of teams with cap space. But it's going to be the interesting thing for him is that Norman Powell got all that cash. Norman Powell got paid. They're like, here, Norm, here's all this money. And if I'm Fred VanVleet, I'm like, you want me to take less than him? No. Get out of here with that. I'm not taking less than Norman Powell for an extension, for a long-term extension.
Yeah,
like, I look at what the bench is doing without me in a playoff series.
I certainly see the comp, and I think those dynamics in a locker room are real. Not that you want to count other people's money, but you look around and say, well, look at his money. I think the difference is the positions that they play. Mm-hmm. And there are more point guards who are elite walking this earth than there are swing players. And thus, you may bet on a Norman Powell saying, man, if he reaches his potential, he could be a 3-and-D guy, and there aren't that many of them. There are always going to be guards, especially guys who are going to be off the bench guards for you. And I think that's what hurts Fred. I mean, let's be honest. It hurt Kyle. DeMar DeRozan, who is also younger and more durable, but he plays a position where there is much more scarcity than the position that Kyle plays when Kyle was up. And Kyle, even though he's been as important to the ascension of this franchise, didn't get nearly the money DeMar made. And I think some of that cap economics has a lot to play with it as well.
Lorraine and Dale tweet in, how angry will or should the Raps be when they see the replay of Beal eating popcorn?
Did you say Lorraine and Dale?
Yeah, it's got a shared Twitter account, 07DMLG.
Do we need an intervention? About
you, honestly, if anyone I know that would have a shared Twitter account.
It's called at Donovan Bennett.
I'm just saying.
It's not called at Bennett
Household.
Household.
If there's anybody that had a shared Twitter account, it'd be the guy that wears the same running shoes as his wife to basketball games. I'm just saying.
It's not this ain't Doug Christie over here.
Do you know what they mean by the replay of Beal eating popcorn? Was he just eating popcorn on the sidelines? I didn't see that.
I didn't see it, but we also weren't watching the same feed as a lot of
some people. Some people were watching what we were watching, and others were not. But maybe it wasn't in that feed. I don't know. I just thought maybe you knew what the popcorn was. Anybody behind the glass know what the popcorn was all about? No? All right. Good job by you guys. Way to be on it. So John Wall, by the way, I'm just looking at his numbers here, like throughout the series. He's leading.
Also, by the way, Lorraine and Dale.
Yeah.
Come with a GIF Come with a screen
Come
cap.
with a screen cap.
You can't just be throwing it out there. I need evidence. I need data.
Their Twitter account doesn't have a. Doesn't have a picture. So.
There's two of you. You've got the manpower.
Lorraine and Dale, step it up. We need that. We need that picture of Bradley Beal eating the popcorn. But John Wall leading his team somehow. He's 4 steals tonight, and he's averaging now just a little under 3 steals a game, which is pretty incredible. And I know the Raptors turn the ball over a lot, but 14 assists now tonight. He's leading his team in assists, obviously, at over 12 a game. Just phenomenal play. And now he scores 28 points. Like, somehow he came into this game and upped all of his averages on everything other than blocks, of which he also leads his team. Like, John Wall, the Wizards are better with John Wall narrative has never looked worse than it is now.
Well, let's be frank. He's been the best player in the series.
No question.
He's been the best player in the series.
No question.
Which is why no lead is safe when in the NBA one player can take over a game or a series. We are seeing it with the Bucks and Celtics, even though the Celtics started off great. Giannis is the best player in that series, and right now he's going off for 19-5 and 5 after 3, and he could win a game for you by himself. And John Wall, as much as he's had his issues, there was fat John Wall earlier in the year. He's lost 15 pounds. He's had multiple knee issues. When he's right, he's a terror.
Mm-hmm. So the reason I brought him back up, though, is you and I have had discussions about whether or not taking Jonas Valanciunas out of a game is playing into the other team's hand. He was incredible in the first half of the last Raptors game. Best player in the first half, other than DeRozan. Tonight, a theme has continued to crop up. There's a reason why he hasn't been closing games, and it's because he's really struggling in the pick and roll. And I'm not trying to put this all on JV because multiple Raptors players have been getting looks at John Wall, and multiple guys are failing. Like, you don't have those averages just because Jonas Valanciunas' minutes. Like, this isn't just on him. But I do wonder if you think that, one, if that's something that the Raptors can keep going back to, and then two, we'll build this conversation off of what you think of how Dwayne Casey has tried to match that and whether you think he's doing a good enough job to slow that down.
I do think you should punish teams, and that if you're going to go small against me, well, I'm going to punish you inside and get you into foul trouble or just kill you on the boards, force you to do something that you're uncomfortable with. But I also think when your players are in a less than advantageous situation, you need to help them. And so Kyle Lowry, who is not going to win a foot race against John Wall, with or without a basketball, and struggling to stay in front of him, thus needs help, thus is putting JV in compromising situations where that's where he struggles in the first place. If you're going to play JV for some high leverage minutes, maybe that should be coupled with DeLon Wright guarding John Wall or OG Anunoby guarding John Wall. Guys who have shown that.
They tried that, though. They did.
But they can at least stay in front of him and get around and force the action so that you're not switching.
You know what I think the biggest key in a lot of this is that you got to try to get Gortat into foul trouble. We mentioned it on Free Association a little bit earlier when we were talking about X factors. I said Gortat is my X factor because they just don't have a guy who can replicate what he does. They don't have another big. If the Raptors lose someone in foul trouble, you can go all the way down to Lucas Nogueira and he can give you some minutes. And he's actually shown that he can help slow down those pick and roll problems a little bit in this series. Like, he actually has come through and helped you. Gortat, 2 times in the series, got into foul trouble early in the games, and it really let Jonas Valanciunas get settled in. He doesn't get as bothered defensively because Gortat is a better option around the basket and he can score. Jan Mahimny, not that guy. Jan Mahimny tonight tried to go up against a double team by himself and was horribly rejected. Did not work out for him. But Gortat is a really good screen setter. He's got incredible chemistry with John Wall. Wall knows exactly where he likes the basketball, feeds it to him perfectly a lot of the times. He's got good hands. He's a good screen setter. He's a hard guy to fight through. Marcin Gortat comes through and sets a hard screen on you. It's pretty tough to sit here from the peanut gallery and say, fight through that screen. Like, that is a really big, tough monster of a man to fight through. They just play so incredibly well together. And I wonder that for the Raps, in trying to limit that, some of the strategy has to be offensive and trying to get Gortat into foul trouble early and making sure that you are attacking him and that you are going into the paint and you are trying to get him to sit down for multiple minutes.
Yeah, and I think JV played 23 minutes. That's the fewest among the starters. And he finished the game even, +0, which was the best on the team, other than Lorenzo Brown, who only played 12 minutes. And I agree. If you are going to commit to getting in Gortat into foul trouble, well, how committed are you? Are you committed enough that you're willing to run some offense for JV, run some things through him on the right block? JV, again, a very nice, efficient night, 75% from the floor, 100% from the line. He is a guy who we've seen him. He's been able to have his way with Gortat, whether it's on the low block or out behind the three-point line, and having Gortat feeling uncomfortable and whether or not he should chase him out there or stay back in the paint. And so if you are willing to play through Jonas in the matchup with Gortat, hoping to get him into foul trouble, if you're that committed, then sure. But I think just hoping that Gortat is going to pick up a foul off of a jump ball here or a loose ball there, I think that's tough. But JV has shown that offensively anyways, he can win that matchup.
I agree. What do you think? I just saw Blake Murphy tweet out that the Raptors have tried 33 different lineup combinations so far this series. Think that's a little bit overdoing it?
Well, I mean, I think when you play 13 people, by default, you're going to have that many.
It's a lot of lineups.
I mean, it's just math.
By the way, we have an update from Lorraine and Dale.
Okay.
So I'm going to show this to you.
Is it from Lorraine or Dale? Like, they should actually...
Just says, here you go.
They should tag their work.
They haven't, Lorraine and Dale.
Autograph your works with success, Lorraine and Dale.
So, as you can see, Bradley Beal goes to the sideline.
Oh, he's looking around as if, like, does anyone see me, even though I'm on national TV in 2 different countries?
So, this is the first time an all-star player has had a little bit of food or a beverage while playing the Toronto Raptors in a blowout.
Steph Curry does this all the time.
Yeah, I don't really. They said they got it on the stream. They can't put it on the stream. Yeah, put it up. Is that it? Is that us? Is that Hal? You got it? Good job. Everyone saw it.
Shout out to Hal.
See it. Yeah, Hal, good job.
Hal may have had the best performance on the night.
Good performance by Hal. Absolutely, big performance. So yeah, I don't think that the question originally was how angry will or should the Raptors be when they see the replay of Bradley Beal eating the popcorn. I think that the Raptors in their film study are going to be worried about a lot more things than what Bradley Beal ate.
You don't think Dwayne Casey's going to have it on a loop in the locker room? Like,
no.
Forget about this live stream of Jurassic Park to inspire you. Put Brad Beal on a loop.
Would you be mad? Like, I'm just asking you. You're playing a sport and you're getting blown out and someone does that.
No, don't care.
Yeah, me neither. I wouldn't care. If I was Raptors, I'd be mad at how they played defensively. You know what was interesting, too, with Bradley Beal? Speaking of him, though, I want to talk to you about this. I'm glad I remembered it. Candace Buckner tweeted before the show. And this goes back to the chemistry issues with the team. I wonder if you think that we do a Is This Anything on Good Show, the radio show that Ben Ennis and I do, 1 to 4 on this very station. We play Is This Anything? Bradley Beal said Scott Brooks apologized to him before the game, according to Candace Buckner of the Washington Post. Said that Brooks took blame for Beal's Game 2 offensive struggles. He took 11 shots. This was Beal's quote. I guess he figured I wasn't shooting the ball enough, and I guess he thought that was his fault. I don't know. He's probably confidence giver. Then Brooks said it wasn't an apology, rather an acknowledgement that everyone needed to take responsibility. Is that anything?
I mean, it depends if you're a fan of Scott Brooks or not. If you're not a fan of Scott Brooks, you're thinking, sounds like he's just trying to grovel to one of his stars so that in the exit meetings, they don't storm to the GM and say, fire this guy. And if you are a fan of Scott Brooks, you're saying, look, he's taking the pressure off his star. Yeah. He's saying, hey, this is my bad. You do you. You play you. I need to do better for you, rather than that player being in his head thinking, man, I'm really struggling.
Mm-hmm. I think that the one big thing from this game, again, was John Wall has been brilliant all series. Some things have remained kind of the same. Mike Scott just continues to hit every single three-pointer that he ever shoots. He was 2 for 2 again tonight. 4 for 4 from the floor, which somehow he elevated from shooting 73% already in this series. But the big difference maker for the Wizards was Bradley Beal. All of a sudden shooting 10 and 19, 4 and 9, knocking down those threes, taking those shots, not getting into foul trouble, playing a ton of minutes, being a plus 19, which I believe led the Wizards. It absolutely did. He got a little moment there, too, at the end or at the beginning of the second quarter where he played just by himself with the bench pieces and could focus on being the offense more and not having to play through through John Wall. And I thought they did a really good job of opening him up and letting him get more touches and create for himself. He had some big baskets in this game, and that'd be a little bit of a concern for me if I'm the Raptors. Is holy crap, the way that John Wall's playing, you add another guy who's going to drop 28 points on you and shoot that from deep. That's a problem.
I wonder how much you and our listeners, let us know, tweet at us, call us. How much do you think the pressure now swings to the Raptors. So if you lose game 4 and you come back to Toronto, Washington winning 2 straight, you were up 2-0. Now it's tied, and they haven't lost at home in the recent memory. Knowing that, man, if we lose on our home floor, we're going back to Washington, a place where we haven't won a playoff game in our history. I just wonder if, quickly that pressure switches from Washington, man, you guys might get swept. What's going on? You're an 8th seed and you're getting dealt with, to, we thought it was different, but was it really different?
I'm looking at this right now and saying that the Raptors have always had most of the pressure in the series, right? They had the pressure in game 1 to get it done, and they took care of it. They had the pressure in game 2 to make sure that they didn't give them the split. It was still mostly on them. They took care of it. Tonight was the first night where I didn't feel like there was a massive amount of pressure on them. It's why when we started the show, I was joking around about how I would have preferred the Cavs win over the Raptors win tonight, because I still believe that the Raptors win this series. I don't know if there's a ton of pressure on them to win this game tomorrow. You talk about home court and home serve, and we've said from the very beginning that I don't think that Washington, like, again, you look at the talent when Bradley Beal and John Wall put games together on the same night like they did tonight. That's a tough team to beat. I don't look at the Raptors and say that there's pressure. I think that they're always looking at home floor and saying, listen, we played for this all season long. We're one of the best home teams in the NBA. We know we're going to take care of business there. They also know that they are getting a big advantage in getting Fred VanVleet back. And again, we don't know when that is. I'm not reporting anything. But if he's going to at least even get a crack at it on game 2, you would think that at some point in this series he's going to play, right?
I mean, you'd hope so. It's not even just about him playing. It's how does he play?
Yeah.
Because when he did play in game 2, he wasn't himself.
Well, that's what I was going to say, too. Because we mentioned this before, too, is like, how do you lose? Because tonight was a real bad loss for the Raptors. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. There were some really troubling signs in this game. And there's not panic button time at all. By no means. You're still up 2-1 in the series, and you haven't lost on home floor. Like, this is all good, and this is all fine. But there were some things from tonight where I was like, that's not quite good. And if you all of a sudden gave this team hope, and you gave them some real confidence for a lot of different reasons. Bradley Beal got confidence. Marcin Gortat got confidence. John Wall bonded with his teammates. There's a lot of things that went well from them. They're probably looking at the Raptors as a little bit more human today. If you lose like this again, 2 straight games, I think that changes the equation. If it's a battle and those 2 guys beat you really tough and they play extremely well, but DeRozan and Lowry and the bench start to play a little bit better and you get some stops and it comes down to the final possessions, it's like that Cavs-Pacers game where it comes down to one heave, then I still think that you're feeling pretty good. It's the stuff that you saw tonight. Be able to clean up one of those things tonight. Don't have it go into another game where you're making adjustments and show up with all the same problems. Don't be turning the ball over 100 million times again. Know that, hey, we're averaging 16 turnovers a game in this series. Let's clean that up. It's time that we stop turning the damn ball over all the time and give them all these opportunities. Hey, you know what? Let's hope that we see a little bit more from the bench mob as a unit together. And if not, let's see what Kyle Lowry can do with them if DeMar DeRozan continues to not be able to buoy that group. Hey, John Wall, let's limit him to some worse field goal percentage. Let's not let him get 14 dimes, and let's certainly not let 14 of them be 8 to Marcin Gortat where he's dropping them in around the cup. So it's going to be, for me, in terms of feeling the pressure, is do you feel pressure because you lost the game? No. Do you feel pressure if they handle you again and they continue to beat you down in the areas that you're trying to improve on? Absolutely, yes. All of a sudden pressure crops up.
Yeah, I think you got to go into game 4 being a bit greedy, thinking like we got to get this. And I judge these games with the let's go index. Producer Papa, we're watching the games together. He'll scream out, let's go, when there's a huge Raptors play, a game-changing play, a momentum-shifting play. He said more let's goes when we looked into the Pacers-Cavs game during commercial breaks and at halftime than he did for the Raptors. There weren't the in-and-out dribbles by DeLon or the heat-check threes by C.J. Miles or the chase-down blocks by Ibaka. There were no plays to forget about us watching, get the teammates excited. And I think the index of the let's go factor, I need about 7.5 let's go.
Okay, so we'll see what the let's go factor is on Sunday when we are back. Again, thanks to everybody who listens to this. Thanks to everybody that's watching it later on YouTube. Thanks to everybody that's downloading the podcast, free association. We appreciate and love you all. Thanks to everybody behind the glass. Hal, Sam, Papa. Good job tonight, boys. Catch you Sunday. This is Raptors Postgame. on Sportsnet.ca and Sportsnet 59 of the Fan.